Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Hewkii and Flammeus show. This time around, we have Martin Ball back on the show. And we went really deep into a lot of stuff regarding both his travels in Iceland and training a group of people with facilitation of 5-Meo DMT.
As well as his personal journey with psychedelics a little bit, and just some really freaking useful stuff around how to facilitate psychedelic ceremonies and how it can be hard to know exactly what's going to happen and how it's therefore hard to teach exactly how to facilitate psychedelic sessions, and how 5-Meo DMT is fundamentally different, especially at high doses from other psychedelic experiences. And this was just a total treat beyond, I think, about 15 or 20 minutes in, where we start really diving into just 5-Meo DMT and his experiences with that stuff, and the experiences of facilitating that group in Iceland with you, Helgi, as well.
Yeah, where I got to receive the medicine and, be a part of that whole thing, which was an absolute pleasure. And what I really enjoyed about this episode is we went into the nitty-gritty, and we explored like in depth a lot of all the avenues around this topic. And as I said, this is Martin Ball's second time on the show, so if you're not familiar with him, I recommend checking out our second podcast episode, where we give a little bit more of an introduction to what 5-Meo DMT is and all of that. This is where we kind of go a little bit more in depth around everything around the facilitation, all the nooks and crannies.
And I do believe avid psychedelic explorers will find a lot of stuff in here to be very, very useful and entertaining and stimulating. It certainly was for me.
Yeah,
I'm very proud of how this came out, so I really expect and hope that you guys enjoy it.
Indeed. So without further ado, enjoy Martin Ball.
Let's go!
Hey.
Welcome back to the show, Martin. So happy to have you back.
It's exciting to be here. Happy to be with you guys again.
Yeah, and you're here, but you're not here anymore.
Yeah,
but you were just here.
I know. It's like the weirdest thing. It's exactly 1 week now that I've been back. And actually I've been really enjoying saying this because it never really occurred to me before I went to Iceland, but I live in Ashland. We pronounce it like Ashland, but it's Ashland, and I went to Iceland, and then I came back to Ashland, and so also got to see like a bunch of places that were used in filming Game of Thrones, which, you know, is a song of fire and ice. And I was like, oh man, I'm so riding the vibe.
Awesome. Mutual Game of Thrones fan over here.
Yeah.
I'm curious, which specific sites did you see? Like, did you connect them to specific scenes?
Well, that's something that I need to actually go back and rewatch the series, or maybe just do a web search of like what was used for what. But we were in one particular canyon with a river going through it and lots of really jagged, pointy rocks that look kind of dragon-like. And so supposedly like Daenerys like flies a dragon through that canyon or something.
Right.
But again, I'm not certain. It's been a number of years since I've actually watched Game of Thrones. And then there was one particular place, the big black cliff, which apparently was used via CGI for the wall in the north, you know, when it's covered with snow and ice. And then they kind of painted that out as, you know, that's the wall in the north. And then up there at the glacier, what is it? Vatnajökull. Yeah, that's the one. Apparently there is an area there that was used for a great big battle. It might have even been that battle that was like so dark that everybody complained that they couldn't see the battle. You
in
know,
the
somewhere.
final season?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we don't talk about that one.
yeah. And then some of the waterfalls and stuff supposedly they've been used. So I've got to go back and like rewatch it.
I feel like I have to insert a little anecdote about the fact that some of the stuff from Beyond the Wall was filmed in Iceland as well. And at the
Yeah.
time, an ex-girlfriend of mine was asked to be an extra because she just happened to live in a nearby town to where they were doing some filming, so she can actually be seen in one of the wildling camps.
Wow.
This is pretty wild. Gave Kit Harington a hug, and that's like my favorite claim to fame.
Wow.
Nice.
I had to give you that one.
Right. Yeah, I've got some scenes in my mind when you mention these, like, yeah, and I suppose it's gonna be fun to rewatch it at some point. You're like, oh yeah, I was there. So it's, yeah, that's cool. It's very cool.
Yeah, and I kept looking for a landscape that looked like the opening scenes of Rogue One, where Galen Esso and his family are like secreted out on some planet, and the Imperial troops come, and that's obviously Iceland. And I think
Yes.
the closest that I saw that looked like that is on the very last day that I was there. We kind of drove through where the volcano is, and that looked kind of similar to that scenery in Rogue One, but it's from seeing Iceland in so many films and movies and TV shows that I've always wanted to go there because it's like it just looks epic and amazing. And I gotta say, just Iceland did not disappoint at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a popular place for filming for a reason, because it's
Yeah.
very unique in its landscapes. And I know the new Dune stuff, I don't know if they just did the recording here or if they're going to, but my brother was going to be a part of, what is it, Dune 3, or at least the next Dune thing that's happening. So,
Yeah.
but he was going to be apparently a soldier, but it didn't work out. But so it's people keep coming back for a reason. But you were like super lucky. You did, like, Iceland was like, okay, Martin Ball's coming. We gotta we gotta roll out the carpet for him.
Yeah, you got some Northern Lights, you said, as well.
Yeah, incredible Northern Lights. So backstory on Northern Lights is like, I think it was last year, maybe the year before. There was some kind of big solar storm that was taking place, and so the news was like, oh, you could go out in Oregon and you could, quote, see the Northern Lights. And so I took my wife and my son. We went up into the hills, and if you look at the sky, it's like, well, I don't see anything. But if you use your camera, which has much greater light sensitivity, like you can hold up your phone, and then it's like, oh, the sky's like all red. Like that's not a normal color for the sky. And then I had my good camera, and I got out the tripod and I took some pictures. And so those were my quote Northern Light photos. But it wasn't anything that you could really see with the naked eye because it just wasn't strong enough. So I'm in Southern Oregon, just right across the border from California. So kind of like, if you put a line through the middle of the United States, that's about where Ashland, Oregon is, kind of midway between north and south. Right. But anyway, flying over on Iceland Air, I had a whole row that, there was 3 seats on one side, 3 seats on my side, and there wasn't anybody else in my row on the airplane. And at one point I was looking out the window, I was like, what? There's a green cloud in the sky. I was like, oh, that must be it. That's the Northern Lights. So then I was running over to the other side and looking to the north, and I could see a lot more over there. So then I spent about an hour like running back and forth on this row of seats between one window and the next so I could look, and tried taking some photos and videos, but it was through the plane window, so it was totally crappy and not worth it. But that was exciting. And then
I've never had that experience, for the record, seeing Northern Lights from a plane. That's amazing.
It was cool. It was before we reached the west coast of Greenland, because I could open up the screen on the airplane, and I could see where we were. I was like, okay, we haven't hit Greenland yet, and that was for about an hour and a half that we had Northern Lights on the plane. So that was really cool. And then I think it was my actual second night in Iceland. So that would be Wednesday night. Went out to dinner. That's actually when we had dinner, Helgi. When we met. Yeah, when we met at Mama's, and then was walking back to the hotel, and like everybody's like standing out on the street with their phones up. So then we look up and it's like, oh yeah, it's going off. So then went down to the waterfront. Oh, back up. I tried taking pictures. There was a little Northern Lights the first night. That was Tuesday night. And I went down to the waterfront, and I didn't bring my gloves, and it was really windy. And like my hands were like frozen within seconds, and the wind almost knocked my camera and the tripod over. So it's like, screw it, I'll try for another night. But it wasn't that spectacular. But anyway, Wednesday night, then it was like all green and swirly, and it had like these eddies and currents in it. And then you can kind of see the light like shimmering down. It's like, okay, this is really cool. If this is all I get, this is amazing. But then, really, what Helgi is referring to is then after the training was all done, and we headed out east to the glacier, and we were staying at the Foss Glacier Hotel. And, I downloaded an Aurora notification app on my phone, and it says, there might be Aurora activity in your area. And I go outside, and the sky is like red and orange, and there's this aquamarine color, and it's just like shimmering and sparkling. So I was like the first person outside, and I had my camera, and I'm setting it up. And okay, I'll go ahead and admit if anybody sees the photos. So it had a little mushroom chocolate. And unfortunately, those photos from that night, they're not quite in focus.
They're hard to capture. Like, you need, like, it's tricky to capture northern lights. Like, I've never gotten good pictures, but
yeah, it's hard, and I had my good camera. So, those pictures that night, they're a little bit out of focus, but you can see the colors, and the colors were amazing. And by the time I stopped taking photos, like the entire hotel, everybody was out there, and everyone, even people from Iceland, were saying like, we've never seen it like this before. Like, this is incredible. And then the hotel room was a little bit too warm, so I had left a window open while I was sleeping. And then I woke up at like 6 a.m. and I went to go close the window because I was a little cold at that point. And I looked outside, and it was totally on again. It's like, oh my God. So I went out there with my camera. I was the only person out there. And those are actually my favorite photos because you could see so many stars in the photos, and the colors were like purple and red and blue and green. And it was just amazing. And there were these pulses of light that went all the way across the sky. Like, my camera couldn't pick it up because it was too fast. It was just like, you've got the shimmering curtains of the auroras, but then this pulse of light was just like, boom, boom. And it was the entire dome of the sky, this light pulsing across. And then got a couple more
Sure, you
times.
didn't have any mushroom chocolate that time.
No. That was just me. And confirmed that then we went up onto the glacier, and we went into an ice cave. And I was talking to the guide, and he said, "Oh yeah, I was up this morning." He said, "Did you see those pulses?" It's like, "Yeah, I totally saw those pulses." So I know I wasn't the only one.
Okay.
And then got a few more nights back in Reykjavik with some nice northern lights as well. So it was amazing. Totally amazing.
It's crazy because, like, I did not even know that red northern lights were possible. And apparently this was like some super rare solar event, some kind of, I think in Icelandic it's called something like a crown eruption. I think that's the name. And it happened last time in 2003. So you just happened to arrive exactly when this was happening.
Called it in with the teachings.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It felt so fortunate. Moxie's just asking to go out, so hold on one second. I'm going to let her out so she can go bark at the deer. Yeah, so I guess just to kind of wrap that up is that it was spectacular and definitely fulfilled my dream of seeing the aurora and seeing the northern lights and getting to photograph it, which is really what I wanted to do besides just see it. And since coming back home, I've thrown together 3 videos now. I'm calling it my Icelandic trilogy saga. So the first one I did is a video of just all my photographs of ice in Iceland, which, for anybody who might think like, oh, well, ice, like, that's boring. And I know ice has a bad name these days because of the United States, but like Icelandic ice is so good they named the country.
Ice. It doesn't kill you, but it can, so be careful.
Yeah, but it can. It's so good that they named the country after it. So that I started with ice, and then the next video I made was the aurora, and then also made a video just of landscape photos. So I've now put these 3 videos out. They're on my YouTube channel in Theogenic Evolution. So it's Icelandic ice, the aurora in Iceland, and landscapes of Iceland. And so put those photo documentaries together, and really they're quite beautiful, I think, because it's really outstanding. Like the ice photos are they're super cool, not to be like punny, but they're really cool. And the aurora photos are just outstandingly beautiful, and the landscapes are just breathtaking. So
yeah, I went through all those. I recommend that people do. Like if you got links, we can put them in the description so people can have a look, because you got some really like good photos.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I got busy with my camera, man. I took a lot of photos. Yeah. So Flammeus and was asking me about how you and I connected over the years, and one thing I didn't mention is that when the volcano was going off, you were like sending me photographs, and you're like, "Come on, man, come to Iceland with your camera. Like, look, the volcano is doing its thing." And so it wasn't doing its thing when I was here this time. So maybe next time.
Yeah. It's been happening just like, with frequent intervals. And where I was living at the time, you could always just see it from the balcony. So I would just like grab the binoculars and just have a little look and see the flame tongues in the distance.
With Eyjafjallajökull back in the day.
not yet back in the day. Yeah, this one near Grindavik.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Yeah, that one. That was occurring every, like, I don't know, with the year between or something. Like it happened a few times.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully next time you'll get some cool pictures, because that was very cool.
Yeah. I'd love to photograph some lava. Yeah.
Your main mission in Iceland was that you were brought here by people that were seeking your advice or training when it came to 5-Meo DMT.
Yeah. Enough on the hobby stuff. Martin, 5-Meo DMT, what is it and how do we get paid for it?
Yeah, well, that was that's what brought me to Iceland. Hold on 1 second. Moxie's ready to come back in. She barked at all the deer and chased them away. This will take me 1 second. So just. Let's get background. Background information is, for one, I teach with the Mindscape Psychedelic Institute, and the main class that we have there that I participate in is the trauma-informed 5-Meo DMT facilitator training course. And I also independently teach a 5-Meo DMT integration specialist training course with Mindscape. So that one is strictly my own class that I teach. And that's just for helping people on the backside of a 5-Meo experience. People are coming for integration. They're coming to, they want to talk about it. They want help understanding it and help processing it. That's what they got classes for. But that's
what Helgi has been doing with you to some degree, right?
Yeah. That I work with clients, generally just like this on a Zoom call, where if somebody has an experience and they want to talk to someone about it, I'm the go-to guy. And so then I also teach other people about how to do that. Like, what do you need to know in order to help people with 5-Meo? Because 5-Meo DMT is very, very different from other psychedelics. It's far more powerful. So then there's the Facilitator training course, and it's a longer course, and I'm one of the primary instructors for that. But there's a number of different people who teach in that class. And that also comes with an experiential training where so the class meets online weekly, and then there comes a point where students, usually later in the program, are invited to gather together in person and get some experiential training of serving 5-Meo to the other students and also receiving 5-Meo from the other students. And it's generally broken down into small doses, medium doses, and large doses. And then, when you come through the program, then, the idea is that you are qualified as a 5-Meo DMT facilitator. And there's another program called the 5 School, which I am not affiliated with. And this is through Tandava Retreat in Mexico. And it's pretty much an identical kind of program where students meet online and then they meet in person and they get some experiential work with 5-Meo. So apparently in Reykjavik, there in Iceland, there are a large number of people who have been through both programs, both at Mindscape and with the 5 School. And they have graduated from the programs. At least the people that I was working with have graduated from those programs. And they collectively invited me to come to Iceland to lead an experiential training with 5-MeO beyond what they had already received through their various programs. And this was definitely, it was an experiment that I said, well, you know, I've never led an experiential training before with a group of people. So I'm not quite sure how it's going to go. And I always like qualify by saying, you know, when I facilitated 5-MeO DMT experiences, I was practicing as what I would identify as a non-dual energetic practitioner. That my form of working with the medicine involves doing direct energy work with clients. And that 5-MeO I viewed as a tool to help facilitate that, but could also do the same kind of energy work without any medicines, or with mushrooms, or with, you know, DMT or Salvia divinorum or 5-MeO MIPT, or, you know, whatever the client wanted to work with. But the majority of my clients wanted to work with 5-MeO, which is very, I can't emphasize enough, it's not what gets taught in these programs. Right? You don't go to school to learn how to do energy work. This is about how do we do proper intake? How do we do proper screening? How do we do a good facilitation? How do we do integration work with clients and provide for aftercare? But it's all very, I would just say, hands off, and not to dismiss it in any way, but it's really, when it comes down to facilitating, it's more this idea of we're kind of trip sitters. We're trip sitters in that we're providing the medicine, providing an experience, and then our work as facilitators, it's about how we bring people into that space, how we hold space during that time period, and then how do we care for them afterwards. And I think that this is really important because there's been a lot of people in the 5-MeO world and in the psychedelic world in general that don't take these things very seriously, or at least have a very different understanding of what all that means. So like training people in the basics, I think is very, very important, especially with 5-MeO. And I think that this is true in Iceland, that we've had a lot of what has been called like drive-by shamanism, where somebody comes in to the local community and says, hey, I have 5-MeO. And then they, without any real screening or any real preparation, they serve as many people as they can over the weekend, and then they fly away to some other place, and then they're gone. And it doesn't prepare people for the 5-MeO experience, provides no aftercare, provides no support. And so that's why these programs have developed, is like, we've got to do better than that, than just this drive-by shamanism. So I think that these programs, both at Tandava, the 5 School, and at Mindscape, are very, very good in addressing this very real problem. But for me, I approach it very differently. And so with these students, I said, okay, well, I've never led like an experiential training before. And just so you know, it's like, I'm not a provider. I don't just provide the experience, that I do energy work. And I don't know what that's going to mean for coming together and working with you guys. And they said, no, we want you to come. We understand. Great, come. So I was like, okay, this is an experiment. Like, I participated in the very first experiential training with Mindscape Institute in Iowa, which I really enjoyed, but it wasn't my show, right? That was being led by the school director, Stephen Kirby, and he did a great job. He has a lot of emphasis on going low, going slow, or just really making things safe and secure, and not pushing people too far. Whereas, I mean, just honestly, I'm kind of the opposite of like, let's go all the way in and find out what happens. That's more of my approach. And I have a lot of reasons for that, but it's just a very different approach. And also my practice was, I'm always consuming the medicine with my clients and then energetically working with them in that sort of synergistic, symbiotic state where the ego boundaries are dissolving and that we're working together as two coordinated units within this energetic exchange and energetic process. So anyway, the students all understood that, so that they brought me out to do that. And it was kind of fun that to start us off, I ended up giving them what I just called the talk, that I retired from actively doing energy work and facilitating in 2016. And so it's actually been almost 10 years since I had ever given anyone the talk. So we started with that. It's like, okay, I'm going to give the talk of what I used to tell people before ever engaging in the work. And that was really great doing that. Like even there, the students said like, wow, you just accomplished in like an hour and a half what it takes us days to accomplish and communicate with potential clients. And actually, one of the students recorded that. And so if anybody's interested, that is available over at my Patreon page at patreon.com/MartinWBall. For any paying supporters at Patreon can get access to that introductory talk. It's about
Sounds like an amazing resource, actually.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. And it was fun to give the talk. It's like it had been 10 years, but I remembered all my lines and I did all my bits. So that was great. And then we just got started by doing like low dose sessions. And then the next day we worked more on like medium dose sessions, but really leaving it open ended. Like this also is very important for me, that a lot of people who serve 5-MeO, they have very specific methodologies that they use where for some, if you go for a quota session, they start you at a low dose, and then if you feel good, they move you up to a medium dose, and then if you feel ready, you go up to a high dose, and then you're done. Other people will provide you with one dose and then say, whatever you got is what you got, and you are now done for today. And if you want any more, you have to come back another time. And my methodology is the idea that within someone's session, if we're pushing the boundaries, there's going to be a point at which a big energetic event takes place for that person. And that what we want to do is not only bring them to that event, but get them through it and then ground them out at the other side of that. And that often takes more than one dose. And it's not a regimented program. So the idea is that you keep taking the medicine until you have that event, and that event is different for every person every time, so that we can make no predictions about what that is. So this is a different methodology of just the one and done, or we gradually work you up and then you're done. And so here, really encouraging the people who are receiving the medicine to ask for more when they feel that they need more. And then also it's potentially the role of the facilitator to encourage the participant to say, hey, I think you could use more. And then also allowing the facilitator to take medicine with the client so that they can really intuitively feel into what is happening with the client and understand when more might be necessary and when there might be a block and when we can break through. So that meant that everybody was having their sessions, everybody serving each other, that we were going on the infinite serving model with just keep asking for more until you've had that breakthrough of whatever that may be. So it was very different for the students that way. And definitely some of them requested that I directly work with them. And I did, which is fun for me. We also did some group work where we were working with these 5-MeO vape pens where the idea was whenever you want one, just grab a pen and you take more, and we're all taking some together. We had music playing. And then on the third day, we moved up to larger, quote, full release doses, and had some really amazing experiences. And that's when Helgi visited us. And then
I was lucky enough to get access to be a guinea pig, so to speak.
Yeah.
I really,
very helpful. And I'm like very curious to dive a little bit deeper into my experience. But
wow, there's so much stuff in there, what you just said, Martin. Thanks for sharing all of that. I felt like we just got all the codes that we I think we would have rightfully needed to pay for.
One important thing that you brought up earlier on is the distinction of kind of your model of being more kind of an active practitioner, and that most people in this space would be classified as facilitators or providers, which is not the same thing. And as I understand, most of these programs are geared towards facilitating or providing in the safest way possible, which is good, because you have, as you say, a lot of people who are doing this, just to, for money essentially, or just trying to do as much as possible and then just, doing that all over the place.
What stands out to me in your method as being different is just the attention to the content of the experience itself, and not the external factors like the quantity taken or the the number of doses taken. You're actually paying attention to what seems to me to be the thing that actually makes the difference. You know, did you get the breakthrough? Did you have the experience that you needed to have? Or did you work through the blockage that you needed to work through to live your life with more ease and grace, I suppose? But a question came up for me. You said infinite doses model.
Yeah.
In itself, it's just hilarious said like that. But I wanted to ask: does it not? Do the effects not dwindle, or do they not? You know, like I know when you take regular old crystal DMT, then you know you can only take so many hits until it doesn't really do anything for you anymore. You know, but is it not so with 5-MeO?
No, 5-MeO, there is no tolerance that builds up over time. And that depending on when you take the next hit, it might piggyback on what came before. So you can kind of work up to a level and then step up from there. But if somebody's already on the downside of the experience and the ego is reintegrating, then you kind of have to start from baseline again. But every time you take a hit, you will get an effect from it. And with the infinite dose model is just keep in mind, it's not actually infinite, but it's just going through, like, you haven't had the thing happen yet. And so there, just to make sure, like with the students and the clients, that there were a few times when I observed, like, okay, that person just had their thing. So I'd go over and I'd just tell the person who was facilitating, okay, if they ask for more at this point, just let them know that they're done. But actually, no one asked for more, because this is another thing that I teach people, is like really paying attention to, when do I feel complete? And that when you feel complete, you will know it, and that you will know that taking more beyond that really is an indulgence and that it's not necessary. And so asking both the practitioner and the client to notice and pay attention to this, and that the overall objective of this is that not only does it make this session with the medicine profoundly more effective for the individual, but it also makes the entire integration process and post-session experience much, much easier for people, rather than, because quite frankly, what I deal with quite often as an integration guide is that people go through a 5-MeO experience and, for lack of a better phrase, all their stuff's been stirred up, but it's not grounded. It hasn't completed. And so then they're grappling with that in the days and weeks and perhaps months afterwards. And that they haven't really been taken all the way through the process within the experience, so that it leaves a lot for afterwards. And it just keeps coming back at them, in a sense. Whereas I find that in working in this capacity, people are much more grounded and it's easier to integrate. It's not to say that that there aren't going to be like reactivations and reverberations and all kinds of stuff happening, because there will, but that it's ultimately easier because they've been through the hardest part of the work. Like, just to put it into this analogy that I use a lot with students, is that it's kind of like sometimes a woman might be giving birth and she reaches a point where she's like, screw it, I want to go home. It's like, I'm done. Like, just put the baby back in. Like, I don't want it anymore. Like, I just want to go home. And of course, the doctor's job is to say, hey, you actually need to stay here in the hospital, that the baby's only half out, and we've got to get the baby out so that you can go home safely. And that's kind of the model that I'm working on, is that when working with 5-MeO, that we have big energies that we're dealing with, and that we don't want someone to leave if their, quote, baby is only half out. It's like, let's get the whole thing out before you go home. And then you have the baby to take home and care for. That's going to be different than going back home with the baby half out and half in and you're not done.
And I can actually like attest to the accuracy of this analogy, because going through this, like this,
I love that analogy.
It really does feel like the process of giving birth.
Yeah.
Like, not that I have, as a man, an experience of that, but it very much has that energy to it.
But it's still, so that's why you say, I was going to ask about you saying that you like to go in all the way right away as well, whereas others like to kind of go with the low dose and then a medium and then a high dose. I'm not clear on exactly why that isn't a logical approach. Still, it seems to me that you could reach that breakthrough by starting small and then going medium and then high, but you're saying that that's just not necessary, I guess. Um,
Not from the perspective of this particular modality. Now, again, for a lot of people who are serving 5-MeO, like I don't want to discount this methodology because I do think that it's good for many people, and especially for a lot of people who are essentially medicine providers, that it allows them to gauge their comfort level with the client and the client's comfort level and ability to trust and open up. Um, but for my methodology, the idea is that your first large dose is what I call the diagnostic round. Because when we're working with a small or medium dose, the ego is going to be very impacted by that experience because 5-MeO is incredibly powerful. So even a small dose will present to the ego as like, wow, that is really, really strong. That's really powerful. But the ego is an incredibly resilient collection of energetic patterns, and it takes a lot of energy to actually effectively, thoroughly disrupt it and potentially dissolve it. So that's when we get past the threshold into the potential non-dual experience with generally it's a large dose of 5-MeO. And at that point, we are able to directly observe and experience where is this person either blocked or resistant or withholding, or where are they opening and where are they processing? Because that is where the ego is presented with an ego death experience of like, oh my God, I think I'm dying, like I'm dissolving. It's at that point when we get everything that happens before then is surface level reaction, where the ego's like, whoa, I don't know what to do, I'm uncomfortable. And once we get into this territory, then it's like the ultimate truth serum. Like you can ask someone beforehand, like, do you want to surrender and trust, relax, let go, and allow? And they'll say yes. But we're not going to know if they can actually do it until we get them to that high level dose. The lower level doses do not give us accurate information about what's going to happen when we actually hit the high dose. Yeah. So for me, I call that the diagnostic round.
I love that.
Again, in my methodology, if we're just doing small doses working up to the diagnostic round, I actually just view that as a waste of my time because that's not giving me any relevant information about what's going to happen when we actually hit the diagnostic round, when the ego is threatened with total dissolution. Yeah. Now, this is getting us the starting material of what we know we're working with at this point. And then you take repeated rounds of medicine after that, and that could be at varying dose levels depending on what's actually needed to keep the momentum and the energy moving forward. And then once we've had whatever the event is, once the baby is born, at that point now you're done for the day. Like we've made it through. So this is it's a much more high intensity model, and I consider it to be far more direct and efficacious than the slow working up. But it is really, really intense to approach it this way. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. This is not for tourists. This is not for the merely curious. This is for people who are willing to go through and really do the serious work.
It just sounds tremendously scary.
It is. It is. And it can also be just tremendously ecstatic. But also working in this capacity, like we're going to lead into Helgi's experience for what he might want to share there. But like with the student who was having her session before Helgi, Helgi arrived and we had
told
just
me all
started.
About this. When I was listening to this story, I was like, "Oh, I would have shit my pants."
I'll put this in quickly. So when I arrived, you guys were in the middle of a session, so I was waiting for you guys to open, and so I could hear everything that was going on, which was a very good preparation because I've done 5-MeO before, and like you hear the vocalizations of the people going through the experience, and it feels very intimidating beforehand. You're like, oh boy, it's this is going down. So that was actually helpful because you gained like
300 rock star and gangster points in my mind when you told me that story. When you were like, "Yeah, I went in anyway," and
Yeah,
I did it.
because
That's
I was sitting there in the hallway and I was hearing everything that was going on, and it was a very big session. I could hear it was like a
Yeah.
lot was
Yeah.
being worked through, and I just this wave of tremendous fear just washed over me, just like very very strong fear that I haven't felt in a while, and that was actually quite helpful because I was able to let that kind of pass through my system, so I
Yeah.
didn't have that kind of crippling fear when I was starting to face my own. I had fear, but not in the same way. So actually, it was quite helpful to, get a little bit of a warm up in that sense. But yeah, please go ahead with where you're going
very
with the story.
interesting. Well, anyway, yeah, finishing up the point we were talking about, basically like a high dose is just a fundamentally different experience from a low or medium dose,
Yes.
and therefore just cannot give you the same level of insight and what you really need.
No.
Yeah.
No. It just 100% cannot. And this is also where I do like to advise anybody who is experiencing 5-MeO that if you've only experienced low and mid-range doses, I do like to just remind people that please don't fool yourself in thinking that you know what actually happens with 5-MeO DMT, because you literally do not have any idea. Because once we get into the high dose range, it goes beyond what we're able to conceptualize. What I wanted to share with this experience before Helgi joined us was it was not the intention that I was going to be the facilitator for that I was going to be the practitioner who was working. But it reached a point where it got, as I joked with the students, I said, well, it went beyond your pay grade. And then actually the participant on the mat like pulled me in and said, I need you now. So I ended up doing some work with her, and it was super, super intense. And I mean, I knew Helgi was outside because I told him, like, yeah, just wait outside by the stairs. It was like, man, I wonder what Helgi's thinking out there. But it got into full on territory. I don't want to share any personal details about that, just for the person who was experiencing that's for her. But it would just say that it definitely put me to the test of like, okay, can I do the work here with all of these folks? I'm used to just working on my own. And what ended up happening was it became like a team of energetic practitioners working. So I was the primary one working with the client, but then several other students got involved, and everything, according to my model, everything was lined up energetically perfectly in terms of where people were physically spaced and how energy was processing. And it was just like this great team experience where we were all in the medicine together and helping to bring the client, the person on the mat, through their experience in a really, really powerful way. And this is someone with lots and lots and lots and lots of psychedelic experience and tons of experience with 5-MeO. And her claim after that was like, this is so far beyond the most powerful psychedelic experience I've ever had in my life, and has completely changed my idea of what's possible in terms of working with this medicine. And I was like, okay, you got it. And then we welcomed Helgi in.
Yeah. So before we go there, I'm just going to go and pee real quick and
Holy
take a short
cow.
break, and
All right.
we'll dive into it. Okay, so my experience, we're gonna go there. So I had done 5-MeO before. This was quite a different setting because you had multiple people. But in a way, it made me feel even more safe in the setting because, first of all, it occurred to me that there was probably nowhere on Earth where there was more 5-MeO DMT experience in one room than in this room. And that definitely made me feel like I was taken good care of. But it's very much about mustering up the courage to sit up and take the hit. And it does take a lot of courage because essentially it is the move of just the ego is willingly taking the dagger and stabbing itself in the heart.
Yeah.
Which is not usually what egos like to do. It's not, within the realms of...
Not generally, no.
No. It's actually kind of the last thing the egos want to do, but you do it anyway for your own good. And for anyone who has done 5-Meo, this will sound very familiar, but it comes on really fast and really strong, and it's very much like being hit with a tsunami of energy. And you can't really hold on. So it starts to work through you very quickly. And actually, it's quite hard to even form memories or concepts around the experience. It's different from if you would do an NDMT and you were to, I don't know, see some entity or some visual content happening. That's easier to conceptualize. Like, oh, I saw these colors and I saw this and this. This takes place so far outside of concepts in any way that it's quite hard to form memories. But there are still, like, it goes through phases. So at first, like, okay, this is being worked through, and here is the spot where you're stuck. And then it's about really, being extremely present with that. And then it moves on to the next phase, and then there's this release, and then at some point I was really deeply screaming. I guess the deepest, most healing moment for me was going through, like, releasing deep frustration and just these kind of deep primal screams. And we actually, me and Tim, we spoke about this on our ketamine podcast, this issue of, like, there's only kind of a set range of expressions that are acceptable in everyday reality. And it's usually not socially acceptable to go around, like, screaming from the bottom of your being.
No.
So there was a lot of kind of repressed energy there that needed to come out in this kind of deep primal way, and that felt deeply, deeply liberating. But then on the second hit, I've never experienced this to this degree before, but it really presented as like, you've done it this time. It's like, this is over, buddy. Like, there's no coming back from this. And it feels so absolutely convincingly real in that sense that it's like, this is the end. That can be quite scary, but it felt good to go through that. But I think it's still important to mention I did not go all the way into non-duality, and I've done essentially 2 different 5-Meo sessions with multiple rounds, and I've never gone all the way into non-duality, but I have with LSD. So I think this is kind of an interesting topic, and I've wanted to actually touch on this before with you, that it's could it be that for different people these different tools, for example, for one kind of a problem you may need a sledgehammer to break down a wall, or for a different situation you may just need a normal hammer or a screwdriver, because I've never been able to go all the way with 5-Meo DMT, and I'm wondering if it's simply just a matter of doing more sessions, because there's a lot of stuff to work through. It seems that it clears out all the stuff that's necessary to clear out before you're able to go all the way. So I'm curious about your take on that, because it's interesting to me that I've gone all the way specifically with LSD, but it has never happened on 5-Meo for me. Yeah.
So that's kind of where I like to make 2 general distinctions, where for some people it's a process of unwinding and unloading and embodying and going through that whole process before they get to, okay, this is the complete dissolution into the non-dual unitary state, right? Which is often perceived as exquisitely divine. It's, this pure sense of ecstasy, this absolute sense of total oneness, pure, infinite, unconditional love, and just infinite energetic expansion and expression. And it's really quite delightful. And sometimes it presents as just the most outstandingly beautiful white light. So that's the white light experience. So some people have to go through a whole process before they have that experience with 5-MeO. But if they keep working at it, eventually they will tend to get there. And then actually one of the students had commented on this in the training, that he said that his very first experience with 5-MeO was the pure white light. And he said, I've been trying to get back there ever since, but it's always just gone into other areas. And that's the other trajectory, that for some people, it's their very first experience. They pop all the way in. But then after that, it changes, because I do like to say, like, I hope everybody gets that experience at least once, but more than once is not actually all that useful, because we are embodied beings. And just going back into the non-dual white light state, I mean, it's great, but it's not going to help you necessarily as the embodied individual that you are. Like, that's really what we need to attend to, because we are in bodies, we are walking around in dualistic reality 99.99% of the time. And so that's really where the attention needs to be. And that's where we actually have agency to come into deep alignment with ourselves.
Right. Wait,
And
so you essentially think it could be the case, in my case, that it's significant that I've had that experience before. So,
Yes.
for example, so if I was visiting 5-MeO DMT as my first medicine, that, you know, that trajectory may have been entirely different. So, and it totally aligns with what you're saying, that what I was going through was very much working on my personal stuff, or repressed emotion, repressed energy, stuff that needed to be cleared out of my body, stuff like this. That was all of it. It wasn't like, sure, there was the ego dissolution part, but it wasn't, the theme wasn't, okay, we're going all the way dissolving into everything. It's like, okay, we're working with your specific stuff. And I can also say that after the experience, I felt way better ever since. Like, a lot more energy, a lot more clarity, like brain fog is really decreased. So, like, just for the practical purposes, not just the divine spiritual, like, that is also sometimes an understated part of this whole thing. A lot of people think it's all about just blissing out, but it's also all about, you know, getting in there and cleaning out. The deep cleaning.
Practicality.
And if I could just comment from the outside, and also I'll just share for the listeners that we had a team, male female couple, that were facilitating for you, Helgi, and I just want to comment that I think that they did a great job, that they did their own introductory talk with you, which I thought was fantastic. Really spot on. And then they were the primary ones working with you, but I took a hit right at the beginning, and then felt like, okay, I'm going to come down here. So I actually was behind everyone, kind of at the foot, like way at the foot of the whole experience, and I was participating all the way along, because I really wanted to do that to support you. And once I took a hit, I felt really drawn to, like, okay, I want to be there with Helgi. And so your first hit, so also for the audience, we were then working with the argon gas lamp, right, which is a very effective means of delivering 5-MeO DMT, and it's very, very powerful. And we were dealing with,
more intimidating. It's this huge, like, lamp thing. It's like, take the hit.
That monster hit.
And you get to watch the piston go down.
Right.
And then, man, it's on. And so that your first hit, and again, these
I
are
really needed to be there. Goddamn.
But the first hit was more of encountering the struggle and the resistance, and you were really processing that really, really well. And you could tell that, you know, there's a lot lodged inside you that is uncomfortable and that needed to be expressed and embodied, and you really did a great job of that. And then it was when you took the second hit, I don't know if you even remember this, but you had, for a time period immediately after taking the second hit, you were in a very free, liberated state. So your arms and legs were moving in symmetry, and you were kind of going up and coming back down. You were very physically active, and you were just, woo! and just expressing just an enthusiasm and a joy that was very ecstatic to observe and feel. So going back to what we were talking about earlier about when is the person going to reach the point? Like for Helgi, that was it. Like so the hit number one, that he went through a lot, and that's where see,
Fuck yes.
you know, someone who doesn't understand this process, who's just a provider of the medicine, will say like, oh, Helgi had a big experience, that's all he needs for today. Whereas my interpretation immediately is like, okay, give him another because he's just getting warmed up. And then it was what happened with that second hit. Like, okay, there's the breakthrough. There is the completely free expression and embodiment of energy in his being. Yeah. That's really what we're going for here. And then there was more emotional processing and a lot of more personal stuff after that. But that was the breakthrough. And so, and all of this took place over about the course of an hour. You know, each hit is very powerful. And then eventually Helgi sat up and said, okay, I don't think I need another. And that's where I kind of stepped in with like, oh yeah, you're done for today. Like, yeah, like that was it. We hit the point of completion. There's not a point in taking more at this point. But it was such a pleasure and honor to be there with you for that, and to be able to observe and feel and experience that with you, because it's like, yeah, this is what I've wanted for Helgi, and so it's just beautiful.
Yeah, it was the whole spectrum of experiences. I went through deeply challenging stuff, facing fears, and then deeply liberating stuff. And the interesting thing is you mentioned this moment of liberation. I don't have a lot of memory of that.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's the point. I don't think necessarily it's not an experience in that way, like going and seeing a movie, and like it's about the energetic process. It's not about the experience, so to speak.
Right.
And the positive effects that's going to have on your being. So I don't feel like I'm missing out for not remembering. I mean, I have memories, vague memories of what happened there. Very much this kind of, oh my god,
yeah,
no, it can't be. And then it's like, yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Yes. That's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god, are you?
Yeah.
Really? Yes.
Yeah. And it just keeps going deeper and deeper into that, because like, yep, and more.
Yeah, that's right.
And you get a free car. You get a free car.
Exactly. And you know, you're 100%.
Can I interrupt, because I think Zoom is glitching out. Can you hold that thought for a couple seconds as we all jump out of this and then come right back in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I should let the audience know. So my computer has been running out of battery really quick these days, and I only have one USB-C cable, so I had to plug out my good microphone. I'm just using my laptop microphone, so I'm just gonna excuse that. There may be some extra background noise. I'm gonna try to mute myself, but I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah,
we can.
You're
Okay, cool.
You're good. Martin,
all
please.
Right. Yeah, so the point that I wanted to make about what Helgi was sharing was that I think this is a really important point to get across, is that the ego doesn't need to know or remember those ecstatic states. And what is more significant is that the body remembers, because this, no matter how mind-blowing this experience is, this is an embodied experience. This is something that is somatically processing in the body, that we hold all of our resistance, all of our fears, all of our traumas, all of our hate, all of our self-loathing, all of our doubt. We hold all of that in the body, whether we're aware of it or not. It's not a psychological phenomenon. This is an embodied phenomenon. And so when you let that go and enter into a freely liberated embodied state, which is what Helgi did in his session, the body remembers and recognizes that, because it says, wow, I'm free. My energy is completely open and I can express myself fully in this. So when Helgi is just like his pinwheeling and he's just woo, that's exactly what that is the body is responding in a way that is very authentic to what it is feeling in that moment, that this is a act of liberation that is taking place in this moment. So then the conscious mind comes back later and it says like, oh, I don't remember it. I don't have a concept. I don't have a memory of it. Again, it doesn't matter because all of that has now been encoded in the body because the body has gotten the chance to experience it in the same sense that I like to compare it to when we go to sleep at night. Like hopefully you go to sleep, your ego goes offline, and when you wake up in the morning, hopefully your body feels better. You feel rested and renewed. It doesn't matter that your mind was not present through that experience. And in fact, if your mind was present, that means that you have insomnia and you're not getting rest and you're not getting up out of bed feeling like, wow, I'm feeling good now. But when the ego gets out of the way, which is constantly trying to manage things and control things, it allows for this deep process and reset to take place in the body. And then the body feels better. And then the mind feels better afterwards because it can perceive there has been the release of deep-seated tensions and repressed energies within the body. And, you know, Helgi, you needed to take a couple days to kind of rest and recuperate. And then we met for shark, and, you know, you were back up on top.
For shark?
Again.
Yeah, we had some fermented shark.
Are you serious?
But I will say, I think this specific shark was a little like, you know, presented for tourists. I've had shark before, and it was a bit more full on. But
it wasn't the shark that my grandpa has.
Probably not, but still,
No
it ticks the box, and that's all that counts.
Yeah, it's still thoroughly repulsive. Like, audience, don't let Helgi trick you with this one. So, you know, this was one of my warped and twisted ambitions in Iceland was like,
try all the disgusting food.
Yeah, that I wanted to try like some traditional Viking food, and so I knew about the fermented Greenland shark. And on one of my mornings wandering around, you know, up to the big church there, that I wandered by the Loki Cafe, and I looked on their menu. I was like, oh, they've got it here. So, you know, Helgi and I set the goal of like, okay, we're gonna meet and we're gonna eat some fermented Greenland shark, and we're gonna toast Leif Erikson. And we did. And, you know, I know Helgi says that it was mild compared to how it can be, but like people have been asking me like, well, what did it taste like? And like my best answer is it's like chewy cat piss, because it's just an overwhelming like scent of ammonia. You know, like cat urine really has like that strong ammonia smell, and like this has got it. And then it's just like these little chewy nuggets. And thank goodness they give us those little shots of that, you know, Icelandic. Yes, because man, that does cut it. That does wash it down. And you really like. I talked to somebody back here in Ashland who had recently gone to Iceland over the summer. And he said that he tried the shark, and I was like, well, did you take the shot with it? He's like, oh, no, I didn't do that. I was like, oh, well, you totally did it wrong. You've got to take the shot because it cuts it and you can wash it down. It's like, you got to do that.
A shot of hard alcohol tastes mild in comparison to this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really,
well, the traditional Icelandic food is not usually my thing, but honestly,
that's because back in the day, our ancestors needed to make the food so disgusting that the bacterium wouldn't eat it. You know, it's like
right. Yeah, like, this is my gripe with this stuff, because like, yeah, I get it. Like, this is where tradition doesn't catch me. It's like, okay, like I get it that you had to do this back in the day. We don't gotta do this anymore. but it's still funny, and I gotta say, this shark, I actually quite enjoyed it in a weird way. But it's kind of like a, you know, just for the experience itself. It's not pleasant, but sometimes an unpleasant thing can be just interesting for,
like a monster hit of 5-Meo.
Yeah, but that's what I wanted to say before. Is like, I think this is maybe a misconception that some people have about this, is that it's some kind of an experience. It's like some kind of an experience to chase, and for me, it's like 5-Meo is the least that of all the psychedelics, because for me it's all about practicality. And so I think maybe that's kind of a misconception that many people have, because DMT can be more like this, like, oh, experiencing these machine elves and these other dimensions, and it's 5-Meo for me. It's not that. It's quite the
It's less
opposite.
less
Yeah.
psychedelic tourism, and just
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Like for me, DMT, I consider that like high level entertainment. You know,
right.
it's
Yeah,
fun, it's cool. It's like, wow, look at all this totally weird shit I'm experiencing and all this crazy stuff that's going on. Whereas 5-MeO will challenge you to the deepest levels of your core and then present you with the opportunity to really transform and to really come into alignment with yourself in a way that I just don't see with other psychedelics. And it's monumentally challenging working at these high dose levels. And this is why a lot of people who facilitate, they don't go into these levels because it's unpredictable. It can be scary and it can be really challenging. And then especially for like the babysitting or trip sitting approach, what do you do with somebody who's having this major process? And if you're not confident or know, like how and when and where can I step in energetically to assist this person? It's really just like people are in this cosmic free fall, and
yeah.
it's challenging. I mean, it can't emphasize that enough. And this is also why I say, like, for people who are interested in working with it, is like you've got to find a good facilitator and work with them. Like, just don't try attempting this on your own. It's
yeah.
not safe, and it can be really destabilizing for
And make
people.
sure the facilitator you find like really kind of thoroughly vet them, and preferably get recommendations from other people,
Yeah,
because somebody can be well-meaning and like, you know, competent to a degree, but are they all the way ready to help you with all the way, you know? And I really like what you said at some point, is that with a facilitator, you basically have to trust them with your life, and
yeah,
that's a high level of trust, and you gotta have make sure that the person working with you is, you know, fully ready.
I
yeah.
wanted to take it back to a thing you said, Martin, about how, well, describing Helgi's experience on this. He had one hit that was difficult, and then the second one took him into a more joyful state. And the way I understood it, very like put in a very, very short fashion, you want to get people to a point where they look like they're having a good time, essentially. Is that your cue that somebody has reached the point of the journey, essentially? Or what is kind of, how do you search for that? What's your cue? Where do you know, you know?
Okay. So this is a really nebulous area. And this is where we can't just put it into a neat little box or set of categories because it depends on the person and it depends on what their energetic process is in that very moment and experience. And it could be bringing them to a state of joy and ecstatic liberation, or it could be bringing them to a state where finally now they are throwing up all over themselves and then rubbing it all over their body. Like that's the thing that needed to happen for that person, or finally letting out that scream and that cry, or finally just breaking down, or reaching into a full body orgasm, or whatever it may be. But let me give you maybe just a couple more examples from the work that we did there without revealing too much about anyone. But there was one individual that I worked with him over the first couple of days, and those were when we were doing the lower doses, right? And so he said, like, yeah, I can still feel that there's a block. And it's like, yeah, I know, I can feel it too. And then even for me, as the practitioner working with him, at one point when we were working together, and again, I'm taking the medicine with people, and so I feel all of that. And as the practitioner, I will say that often it's not very pleasant. Like if you feel like somebody has some kind of dark, twisted knot inside them, and if you feel that, it's like, so even when I was working on them, there's a part of my mind that's like, yeah, this is why you didn't want to do this anymore, because it just fucking sucks to go in and like feel all this nasty shit, and it's like so uncomfortable. Um, and it is. And then he was rather active in one hand. His right hand was kind of like shaking and vibrating, but that was it. Okay. And then clearly there was something blocked along the center line of his body, like around his heart area. And we had kind of opened it up a little bit, but yeah, he said, I can feel it's still there. It's loosened up a bit, but it's still there. It's like, yeah, it's still there. So then on the day when we were doing the large doses, he invited two of the other students to work with him. And he took a lot of rounds of medicine. He just kept going and going and going. And then finally, he hit the point where now his kind of like Helgi, but in a different way, his whole body started to move. It wasn't just the right hand. It's like now the energy is translating all up and down his body, and it's going all the way through in all of his limbs, and it was all the way open. And that's when, I mean, there was like a collective sigh of relief in the room. Like everyone was like, ah, like that was it for him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that he was in a state of joy, like as Helgi was, because he was going through something different. But also, what I'm often doing is I observe people's abdomens and their diaphragms, because that's where the pulse presents very strongly. And I could actually see waves go like down his abdomen of his pulse as things were opening up. And then once it hits that open point, then the pulse becomes smooth, the breath becomes even, and then the energy is freely distributed throughout the body. And so that's where that was one of the cases where I went over and I told the person serving, I said, okay, if he asks for more at this point, let him know that he's done. But then when he sat up, he's like, I am done. I am good. It's like, yeah, okay, that's the point. And so it took us several days to get there because we weren't working at the intensity level that he really needed in order to have that breakthrough. But that's where he got it, right? And then the person before Helgi, I will just share that there was a fundamental no that was lodged so deep within her being that it was fundamentally willing to kill her to not turn into a yes. And for her, we reached the point where she let go of the no.
Wow.
And that was really, really intense. This is what Helgi was hearing from out in the stairway, was this no being released.
And I heard it when it turned into a yes.
Yeah.
And I heard the yes was, so this obviously became a very shared experience between everybody in the room.
Yeah.
And I could hear you were saying, yes, yes, thank you. And this is what I understood. Okay, it's all good. But I think I arrived when this was kind of at the height of the difficulty. So
Yeah.
that was quite a first impression for me. But I really felt like I went through that experience with you guys.
Yeah.
And especially as somebody who's energetically sensitive, like you can feel through a wall.
Yeah, you can.
Maybe not everybody would, but somebody who's done this before and somebody who's energetically sensitive, you can definitely feel when something difficult is being worked through. And I could very tangibly feel the relief afterwards.
Yeah.
So in summary, it's about just noticing when the blockage is gone and energy is being allowed to flow evenly through and out of the body, perhaps.
It's like that. I don't know who said that quote. Like, I can't define pornography, but you know it when you see it.
I'm gonna strangely enough connect this to teaching music one-on-one, which I do for a living mostly now. In-person music lessons one-on-one, mostly instruments, but a lot of the people who come to me to learn guitar, who are like beginner guitarists, they secretly kind of want to sing as well. And as an energetically sensitive person, or that's how I would describe myself, at least, and I think that's a fair assessment. I can tell, like you can really tell when people are uncomfortable about what they're trying to do in front of you as like the teacher, as like the authority. Like I got all my shit together. I know how to play all the chords and I can shred the guitar. And this person comes in and just feels very small in comparison, and you can really feel it. And like just that kind of element of working with another human being in a space like that. Obviously, I mean, working with 5-Meo versus working on music skills is very different, but the human element of it still strikes me as very similar. in
Yeah.
that like what you were saying there, when you feel that blockage within the person, and as an energetically sensitive person yourself, it's like it's uncomfortable, you know, when you see that they're not comfortable about what's going on inside of them, and you're just like, just it can be a bit annoying, quite frankly. Sometimes you just like, just freaking let go, you know, just do it. What are you waiting for? Like, God,
Yeah.
you are the only thing standing in the way of yourself right now. Like, what are you doing? And I'm not judging you. Like, I'm not here. I used to be at your level, for Christ's sake, you know? So yeah,
Yeah.
that was a
Yeah.
funny connection to make.
Yeah. No, I think that that's totally relevant. And it fundamentally is the same thing. And this is like blocks at the deepest possible level within someone. And just this is a methodology and an avenue for going inside of it with them to directly and immediately help them break that open and break through. And also have to emphasize that it has to be the person's choice. I mean, you can, as an energetic practitioner, you can assist someone, but as you know, Flammeus, I mean, you can tell someone like, let go of that block. They need to let it go. Like they have to
Yeah.
do it. But if you can find a skillful way of getting into it with them, and here this is like direct physical contact of like, we're going to find it in your body and work it through together. And, part of my opening talk that I would always give people is, my non-dual take on it is I'm literally just another version of you over here. So you don't need to be self-conscious in front of me. You don't need to hold back. You don't need to perform for me, and know that my body is available for you to use as needed to help see this process through. And I will be with you every step along the way because I actually am you, and we're going to do it together. All right, you ready? Let's light the pipe. Let's go for it.
Uh, uh, yeah, I mean, I wish, teaching music, obviously, you're not in the kind of position where you've got somebody coming to you to expressly, they've got the intent of going into the psychedelic realm, and it can be,
So
yeah.
this is actually the new domain. You gotta, you know, weave together 5-Meo DMT. Like, okay, we're gonna get the blockages out of the way. Then you're gonna sing.
This is requirement, part of the deal, part of the contract. If you want to do one-on-one with me on the guitar, 3 monster hits of DMT or however many it takes for you to have your breakthrough. And yeah.
Well, that actually is something that shows up spontaneously for some people on 5-MeO when they do have a breakthrough. So connecting to the voice is a very important part of the whole energetic embodiment and expression process. And people go through phases where they speak and their voice sounds very, very different as they're speaking. And then some people do spontaneously break into song, like people who say, I never sing or I've never done that before. Like they might just start singing or chanting or toning. And so it is part of that process for a lot of people. And even a lot of people are shut down in this area because they get used to telling people what they think other people want to hear, or they are constantly editing and censoring themselves. And so you get a lot of energy that releases through here where people are like gagging and choking. And then finally, like, I'm able to breathe. Like I wasn't able to breathe, and now I can speak, and I couldn't speak before. So it's all tied together. It's because it's all energy, right? It's all the same thing. And where we create our own limits for ourselves, where
Yeah.
we have taken something in from outside and say, yeah, I'm gonna hold myself back.
But
Hmm.
it's happening so fundamentally in all the layers. Like the voice is a very strong one for me, and I think for probably most people, because there's very strong kind of social conditioning that's placed on how you're allowed to express yourself. But it's like it's sexually, it's emotionally, even ways you're supposed to think. Like social conditioning is
Yeah,
such a strong thing for basically everybody, and it takes so much work to deprogram that stuff so people can actually just feel free to express themselves.
Yes.
um, and it runs so much deeper than we think, and it really gets revealed in the 5-MeO. Just wow, like all the
yeah,
ways I've been told to be and have not allowed myself to be, and it seems to come out more explosively the more repressed that
yeah,
particular thing has been.
yeah.
So for me,
Very
I
true.
remember the most explosive thing was this screaming, and
Yeah, we talked about that, man, on the phone the other day about
Yeah,
how you've not allowed yourself to express yourself through your vocal. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, because I'm a guitar player also, so like I've always been more the silent type who's let my fingers do the talking. But even now, I'm starting to experiment a little more with singing, and we have all these kind of, you know, um, we it becomes kind of professionalized. The only people that are allowed to sing are singers, and you
Yeah.
have to be good to sing. And this is like something we really gotta let go of like you don't have to like sing to some professional standard in order to have fun and express yourself. But like you see this, like I've also taught music, and you see this a lot. People apologize for making mistakes. And it's like, no, this is what it's all about. There are no mistakes. It's you're just exploring yourself, and you're seeing what you like and you don't like, and it gets refined over time. But I think this kind of stuff runs very deep, and it's interesting to see the parallels between music music and
yes.
because it's fundamentally it's all expression, and the social conditioning is acting in the same way on both fields.
Yeah.
And I was like the thing that I found so relatable, Martin, when you said that it was hard for you as the facilitator to feel the darkness within the person you're facilitating the ceremony for, because that's like fundamentally the biggest reason why I come home exhausted after, a 5 hour block of teaching straight.
Yeah.
It's just like it's just all this dealing with human beings and their insecurities is just like it just takes a lot out of you when you're sensitive to it. It's
Yeah.
so yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you must have had some ceremonies, some um or well, I don't think you like that word, do you?
Yeah, I use the word session, but yeah, I get what you're pointing at. But see, this is where, kind of from a selfish perspective, that my approach was we're going to keep working till we hit that point of resolution, because not only do I not want you, the client, to go home feeling stuck and blocked, I don't want to keep feeling that either. So just to like give you an example of, often when I was working, it might present initially as a really disgusting taste in my mouth. Like I'd take a hit with the client and then just like, oh, that fucking tastes awful. Like this is something like really nasty here. And then when we finally hit the breakthrough point, again, whatever that may be, that because it's different for different people at different times, then all of a sudden there'd be this taste of sweetness in my mouth. It's like, oh, that is so delicious. And so my goal was, as long as the client was willing, we would keep going until we hit that point. And that's just one way that it might manifest. But the idea is we're both going to leave here feeling better. And now I did have a couple clients, I practiced for like 7 years. And I did have a couple clients that really ended this session, in my professional opinion, prematurely because they were scared or they were nervous. But other than that, I'm really happy to say that this is why clients came to work with me, because they knew like Martin's going to stick with me through thick and thin until we reach this point of resolution. And they saw value in that, even though it was intense and sometimes yucky and messy and hard. Um, so that, because people would always ask me like, well, how do you not like get residual, energies, residing within you from this work? It's like, because we just saw it all the way through every time. So it's like we clean the system out, and I get to experience that as the practitioner as well. And so again, it's a little bit selfish. It's like, yeah, I want to take you all the way through, and I'm going to go through with you, and I'm going to make sure we're going to come out clean, because I don't want any of that crap myself.
I mean,
Yeah.
fair enough, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's one thing that's coming up for me now. I don't know how much more time you have, Martin. We don't want to keep you too long, but
I got a bit more time. Yeah.
okay. So there's something that came up for me very interestingly now. Something I learned in psychology class a few years ago was uh, exposure therapy, and they were using the example of people with arachnophobia, fear of spiders. So they were kind of demonstrating these two different paths that were used. One of them was kind of gradual exposure therapy, where you start with looking at pictures of spiders, and then you can hold the spider in a glass cube, and then you can have a small spider, and you can have a bigger one. And I was seeing kind of the analogy now of kind of the people that start with low doses and work their way up. And then the other route they were teaching us about was the flood therapy, where essentially somebody with this kind of fear would be lay down and a bucket of spiders would be dumped on them, and their fear would just completely spike. But what would happen is that then the fear would gradually decrease and they were better afterwards. So this is how it was presented, and I'm kind of curious. I'm connecting the dots with kind of your approach when it comes to 5-Meo, contrasted with the more gradual thing.
Yeah.
And would you say it's kind of an analogous thing?
Yeah,
to
because we should address re-traumatization, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the potential.
So, yeah. So it definitely is like more like dropping the bucket of spiders on someone, because it's getting to the core. Like the deepest core fears that people have is being afraid of dying and being afraid of living without limits and really allowing themselves to fully be themselves. And so this is a way of like dumping them into the deep end of that. And that this is where, yes, if done incorrectly and without this attention to getting people all the way through it, it can be traumatizing. And so this is another area where I deal with a lot of people on the integration side where their 5-MeO experience was traumatic. And it's often compounded by facilitation that doesn't know what to do with someone who is going through an experience like this and doesn't know how to assist in actually providing the breakthrough. So that's where the breakthrough is very, very important. Like, again, it's got to be someone's choice to willingly, okay, dump another bucket of spiders on me. It's got to be their choice. But as Helgi is sharing here, that is the potential that, yes, that anxiety and fear may spike, but then if you come out the other end, it can be like, I don't know what I was ever afraid of. Like that, I had this whole fear, but now that I've been through it, I don't know why I was afraid that way. So it's very important that people not be left in the fear response or in the trauma response. We've got to see them all the way through so that the experience lands properly. And again, this is very advanced work ultimately. This is why my students in Iceland, that they said, wow, I think we were in kindergarten before, and now this is graduate level work. It's like, yeah, this pretty much is. Like, it doesn't get more advanced than this. And even, there was some great skill among the students that I was working with, but there were a couple cases where it really was necessary for me to be the one who was energetically managing the space, just because of the level of intensity that was arising within people's experiences.
But I'm so curious about this because it seems like you have a very fundamentally unique approach to this, and I don't really see many people that do the whole practitioner approach to this. Like it's very rare that there are people that are doing this in the same fashion as you are. So I'm curious, like, why do you think this is such a rare thing for people, or do you expect this to emerge more now with time, that you're going to see people working in a similar way to yourself? Or so what's the reason?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, the first is that the process that I went through of opening and energetically reformatting with 5-MeO DMT, that I have not seen other people who have gone through at the same level that I went through. And I don't mean that as a brag. I'm just trying to give like just my perfectly honest assessment. And I know that this can be hard for people to hear because people think like, oh, that sounds very egotistical. But I've gone farther with it than anybody else that I know of on the planet. That's all I can tell you. And that I developed a level of trust with the experience and intimate knowledge, which again, I've not seen actually reflected in other people.
I'm curious to get you speaking with Leo Gura again. I want to make this happen at some point, but yeah, go ahead.
So I think that's part of where the difference arises, and that my way of practicing then developed organically out of that result. And versus I am not someone who has ever been trained. And then as 5-MeO has become more popular, and again, I want to emphasize that I think that this is good because there has been some really shitty facilitation out there. And like I mentioned, the drive-by shamanism, that really damaged a lot of people. There's no question about that. And there also has been people who, quote, do energy work, but they're actually just inserting themselves into people's experience because in my observation and experience, like they don't actually know what they're doing. So this model, especially as psychedelic therapy has become more mainstream, the idea is, look, we want to provide safe, consistent, practical ways of administering these kinds of medicines and just keeping people safe all the way through and really making it professional. I think that that's valuable, but the limitation is that it doesn't allow any room for somebody who actually is a skilled energetic practitioner to have any kind of agency or any means of participating in the event without being labeled as some kind of ethical violation. Right? I mean, this is what happened with me in Symposia, where they decided, like, oh, based on his descriptions, we're going to characterize him as this incredibly unethical, abusive. I mean, they even fucking called me a rapist. So there's been such a strong perception and fear around that people, in my opinion, they have moved too far into comfort and safety, and let's not push anybody's, boundaries.
This connects to what I was saying before, is that we have these kind of set notions of what's acceptable within everyday society, which makes sense. We, polite society to kind of function in a smooth way, I guess. But I think, for example, with this case of Symposia coming after you, like it was very obvious to me in that case, and hilarious in a way, that you've got people judging what happens within a 5-MeO session from the lens of like cultural norms, and what's gonna happen in a 5-MeO session. It's like it's gonna look fucking crazy from everyday reality. But I guess my question is, like, how would you distinguish, because you could have an event that looks identical, and in one case it would be abusive, and in one case it wouldn't be. So how would you distinguish? Like, let's just take an example. Somebody has an energetic knot like down their throat, and you're like, oh, I really got to work on this. I got to get my thumbs down their throat to work this through. So what would be the difference of somebody who is intruding on somebody's experience and somebody who is authentically working with the energy in the proper way?
Yeah. So this obviously is where it gets super, super complicated. And probably most people won't be satisfied with the answer, but it comes down to, is there permission or not?
Right.
And that's the most important thing, is that anybody who is energetically practicing in this capacity has to be extremely sensitive to where is the client's permission given and granted. And this is where it's important to have a very good rapport before you begin, right? That you're starting from a place of trust and a place of acceptance. And yes, I give you permission to do what you need to do to help me through. And then the practitioner needs to be sensitive, is when is the energy of the client saying no to the energy work versus when are they saying no to something that's inside them that they still want help on, right? That these are different. And that where is the capacity of the practitioner to actually step back. So I've seen some people doing energy work, and my impression from outside is, wow, you're really imposing yourself on that person.
I've seen that as well. And I think also in some of those cases the practitioners think they're following the energy.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But they're not. And this is where this is why I've never actually tried to train anybody in this, because it's like, where do we even begin? That because for me, again, it arose organically, that just this sensitivity of like, where is the yes, where is the no, where is the follow this, where is the back off? And then, through that practice with clients and their overwhelmingly positive affirmations subsequent to having a session of like, okay, this is really being done right. Um, with Symposia, they created their entire narrative of Martin is abusive,
What
which
is
was kind of
Symposia?
so. Symposia is a left wing, self-described left wing psychedelic watchdog group in the United States that basically functioning on like seriously woke psychedelic ideology of we're going to call out everyone that we think is a bad actor and we're just going to smear them and create as bad a reputation for them as possible because we want to
Okay,
destroy them professionally. So that's what they did to me
that's fun.
in 2021. Um, but the point is that they created this narrative, and my former clients came and told them, like, you're completely mischaracterizing work with Martin. Like, it's not like this at all. Like,
It's just so
you,
funny because this never came, like the complaint never came from anybody who worked with you,
no,
just from people who watched some video and then had their own conceptions about things and then imposed that on everybody else. And I think this is the key distinction where you can also know when somebody's being abusive or not. Is this coming from people that have actually worked with the practitioner?
yeah.
Or is this just somebody from outside who has no idea how things actually
No,
work
they're
out?
just brainwashed into thinking it was actually okay.
Yeah, exactly. I
Okay,
mean,
so,
that could be the case in some cases as well,
yeah.
for sure. But
Which is
yeah,
what Symposia said about my clients as
Yeah.
well. Said that, oh, well, you've been brainwashed.
all
Um,
of them.
but I think that that's an important distinction. Like there are psychedelic facilitators out there in the world that have been accused of wrongdoing, and that those are complaints that have been made by people who have experienced that firsthand. And I think that that's something that we do need to take very, very seriously. I am not one of those people, but Symposia made it seem like I was. But this is hard to teach, and that anybody who is willing to learn this, I think they've got to be open to a lot of feedback from their clients and then also from other skilled facilitators and people observing them. But it can be very difficult that watching a 5-MeO session from outside is very, very different than the experience from inside. And that we really do need to rely on people's internal accounts, which is challenging because, like we were talking about, that it can be hard to remember everything. It can be hard to recall what actually took place. But it's a sensitive issue. And this is why I've never really attempted to teach anyone my particular methodology and why I haven't seen it reduplicated. But I was
Yeah.
definitely felt encouraged by this time working with students in Iceland that felt like, okay, well, there's some people that they were very receptive to this level of education and work, and that, there definitely varying levels of skill and experience there, but it kind of one of the things that the students said that they found very empowering was they felt that they had an invitation to explore this more, whereas before it was kind of like a hard no, you may not ever do this. And that's one of these ironies of these facilitation programs or just modern psychedelic facilitation in general, is that we're putting a lot of limits out there about what you can and can't do and what's proper and what's improper. And I understand the desire for that, but we're dealing with things that are really out of the box
Yeah.
and events that are not fit within the realm of normal and regular social interaction. And that I do think that we need to allow a certain level of flexibility and a certain level of allowance for people to experiment and not just jump on someone because they're not just taking honestly a very passive role in people's experience. And that's also the MAPS protocol is like no directive actions may be taken on the part of the facilitator, versus sometimes as a practitioner I do want to tell someone you need to breathe now,
Hmm.
versus
Yeah.
in MAPS that would be considered a violation. So that's why I won't ever work for Maps, and they won't ever have me work for them.
But wait, okay, so you say you wouldn't teach or you haven't considered teaching your method of facilitating 5-MeO sessions.
Wait, but
But
I'm curious though, if I may jump in, that like
okay,
it doesn't
I'll hold on to this one.
it doesn't sound like it's even a method. So I'm starting to understand that it's not necessarily that you developed some kind of set of protocols to follow. That like to draw another music analogy, it's kind of like, in classical music you get the sheet and you play the sheets, but
Yeah,
in jazz you're kind of encouraged to find your own voice and improvise, and nobody can
yeah,
essentially teach you how to do that.
right,
So essentially, what you're talking about is like you don't have a method; you just know intuitively how to do this through your own experience, and
So I
everybody else that's attempting to do this needs to go through the same
right.
process of figuring out for themselves.
Yes, and how, like, I felt like a logical question in that vein would be, how the heck did you get where you are? What was your
Oh
process?
boy,
So, I mean
that's a book on
it's
it.
honestly it's too long of a conversation to have right now. So here's the
Yeah.
short answer.
Being infinite.
So this is what I do. Like when people ask me that, I say, okay, well, you can read my memoir, Being Infinite,
Uh,
an entheogenic odyssey into the limitless eternal, a memoir from ayahuasca to Zen. And this tells the story because this is what happened when I was doing this work. And, I wrote like my book, Being Human. I had so many of my clients and so many people ask me, like, how did you learn all of this? Like, where did you study? And I told the story so many times. I was like, okay, I'm just going to write it down. So I wrote it into a book. And so that's the answers then. As you can see, it's a good length book. But
Is it
it
available
all,
on Amazon, on Kindle?
yeah, it's on Amazon, Kindle, audiobook. It's all out there, Being Infinite.
Being Infinite. Okay, I'm on
And
it.
it has to go, because it's the story of me. So it has to go back to childhood. And then, like, the real action starts about halfway through the book. But you have to tell the whole story in order to tell the whole story. But yes, that it's more of a capacity that I developed, or I should say, I discovered that I had this capacity within myself. I didn't know that I had the capacity, but I discovered it, and then I accepted it and I trusted it. And that I can communicate, look, these are the basic guidelines for how you do the work. And that's where in books like this one, in Theogenic Liberation, I spell out here's all the ways that the ego interacts with 5-MeO DMT. Here's all the kinds of experiences. And then here's how you actually work with it. And I do lay out some of the groundwork for doing this kind of energy work and kind of recommend people apply those principles to themselves and bring those. This is where, if people read my books, even if they're working with a facilitator that doesn't know anything about my approach, they can apply the principles themselves and they can start to work from there. And so that's what most people do. And then I've had facilitators who read the books and they try and apply the principles as well, but not at the direct level that I was doing. But that's where, like, I've tried to share, like, here are the basics. But other than that, it's a deeply intuitive and it's an embodied process, and that you need to have gone through a process similar to mine in order to reach a point where you can actually do it at this level. So that's why I don't think it is. I don't think it's fundamentally teachable. It's shareable, but it's not teachable in that sense.
in other words, it's jazz.
It's jazz,
It's
man.
just
It's
jazz.
jazz.
Did you? But
You
wait,
gotta learn
wait.
how to improvise, and
I gotta know before I go and read the full book, which I will do now, because I do want to know that story. But because you said wouldn't recommend to anybody to do 5-MeO on their own, but surely you have.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there, the consideration is, particularly when we're dealing with high dose level of 5-MeO, my uniform recommendation is work with a facilitator that you trust and who is skilled and educated, and do at least several full release dose sessions with a facilitator before attempting to do any work on your own or any experience on your own. And this goes back to the idea of the diagnostic round, that you've got to get through the diagnosis to find out, like, oh, am I someone who's going to get up and try and run away? Or am I someone who's going to get up and, like, trash my apartment? Or am I going to throw up all over myself? Like, you don't know until you get there. So we don't want people to start doing that on their own.
Yeah.
But then once you've gone through that and you've had a few sessions where the energy has been able to integrate and bring you more into alignment, then if you want to work on your own, I think that that is much safer and much more viable at that point. And then also, a lot of people like to work with small doses for meditation or just to kind of vibe into themselves. And I think that that's perfectly fine to do on your own, that you don't need a babysitter for something like that. But even if people are working on their own, at high dose levels, even there, it generally is recommended to at least have somebody else in the same house with you. Maybe they don't need to be in the same room, but it's good just not to be doing it all on your own, because you never know when you are going to hit a point of, whoa, this is beyond what I thought I was prepared for. But other than that, yes, I have done it on my own. But when I was going through my process with it, back in 2008 and 2009, I was always served in a ceremonial temple context. So that was always with other people present.
It's also important to note that the risk level of things going wrong is much higher with this than with other psychedelics.
Say ketamine.
Yeah, yeah, because it's just orders of magnitude more intense, and you have no idea. And what I've gathered from also observing other people getting served through the training is like how much variety there is of reactions.
Yes.
Like some people just really know how to take it, and some people, like, their body resists and starts thrashing around or moving around or standing up, and it's like, wow, like this is not, and this is, I guess, why it's so hard to come up with any kind of method or protocol, because it's every situation is so uniquely different.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was very interesting too, because of course there's always variability, but it's so there's
So
such a wide spectrum of things that can take place.
Isn't
Yeah.
doesn't that make, I mean, isn't that kind of true for facilitating any kind of psychedelic session, that it would be hard to come up with a standard operating procedure for a situation that might come up?
Well, I just think it's much more so the case with 5-MeO, because for one, again, when we're dealing with high level doses, we really are dissolving, at the very least, the surface conscious parts of the ego. And so people often, as Helgi has described, people often have periods where they don't have any conscious recall. And here, some people might be really acting out, but their internal perception is that they were lying peacefully still. And we also have other people who their internal perception is that they're screaming and thrashing about wildly, but externally they are not doing anything. They're just lying there peacefully.
Hmm.
And that it's also a much more somatic and embodied process than a lot of psychedelic medicines. So, for example, if somebody takes psilocybin, they can have a wide variety of experiences while they're lying on the couch with the blindfolds on and the trip sitter is sitting there watching them. They can be going through many, many different kinds of things, but almost all the way through, you can still have a conversation with them. You can still advise them, and they can respond, and they are still in control of their bodies. But once we get into high levels of 5-MeO DMT, people are not in control of their bodies. You are not able to have a conversation with them. They may or may not be receptive to language. They may or may not be aware of what's taking place in 3D reality outside of the overwhelming context of the internal experience of 5-MeO. So it's a completely different beast. It's a completely different order. And that the way people react to it is just, it's much more dramatic and visceral. Like Helgi got to see, we had one individual go, that was our last session of the day, where it took like 4 of us to prevent him from hurting himself. Not that he was trying to hurt himself, but that he was so physically active that it took many of us like repeatedly catching him as he is throwing himself around the room to prevent him from throwing his head into the floor or into a piece of furniture. And then he eventually had his breakthrough, which is that was the resistance to the breakthrough that was acting out. And this, he said, like, I'm a thrasher. So we had an understanding of that. He had an understanding of that. But if he were a brand new client, we never would have known that would have been a potential.
Right.
Right? And he had zero control over that.
how would you have handled a situation like that if for example, when you were working with it as a solo practitioner? Because in this case, it took 4 people.
Yeah, well, it would have been a little bit different because the way that I had my space arranged, there wouldn't have been as much for him to crash into. And also, I facilitated on a soft carpeted floor, whereas here we were working on a solid, hard floor, and we just had the mattress on the floor and some pillows around. So people actually could like land on my floor and they wouldn't hurt their head to any great capacity. But here, this was definitely like, oh, I've got to catch her head as it's coming down to the hard floor right here. And that we also, I mean, it was nice. We had candles and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, you got to watch the candles over there. Whereas, again, me facilitating alone with my wife downstairs, I wouldn't have had any candles or anything like that. So that if somebody needed to roll around and thrash, there'd be more room for that. And then there's also the possibility of just like pinning somebody down on the mat just to keep them safe. But this is why, and like this was a relatively small individual. And in those states, incredibly strong, very, very strong. There's a lot of adrenaline running. There's a lot of power.
And did it look like muscle spasms, or did it look to some degree like a conscious person doing a wild dance, you know, on purpose, or did it look like
the latter, or almost? For me from the outside, it looked very much like oh, my dog is crying. He needs attention. But it looked kind of like a mix of both, I guess. Yeah. Because it looked involuntary. It was like it was not. It was obviously not kind of a conscious movement in that sense, but it wasn't like a spasm at the same time.
I'm asking because I remember having I remember doing some DMT breath work right here on this couch, actually, next to this table right here. And I was sitting right where I'm sitting right now. And at a certain point during a breath hold, I just lost a sense of where I was and what I was doing. And I fell to the side and I hit my ear like repeatedly on this table over here. And I didn't feel a thing as it was happening. And I didn't even really notice what was going on. But I had, I was sore for like a week after. I really, really mashed my ear into the table pretty hard there. But I think that would have looked more like a spasm than any kind of conscious movement. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's something that's possible. Also, kind of dance-like moves, those are possible. And just twisting and writhing in the energy, convulsing, tremors, again, full body orgasm, rapid vibrations across the body. All of these things are possible. And most of them occur without any conscious awareness on the part of the person who is demonstrating these kinds of things. Which is another reason why, like, don't do it at home alone, because you might end up hurting yourself and not doing that you're hurting yourself. And sometimes, like you mentioned with your ear, sometimes what the body is looking for is a boundary and it can't find it. And then when it finds a boundary, it's like, oh, there's a boundary. Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's a boundary. I found it.
That's exactly what it was like.
Yeah, but you are not consciously choosing that, okay? So whereas that can occur with other psychedelics, it's more rare. Whereas with 5-MeO, this is normal. This is like part of the process that we need to expect these kinds of things to take place, and often very, very dramatically and viscerally. It's not like, oh, you had a little event. It's like you just had the biggest event of your life that just took place right there. So it's just orders of magnitude beyond.
Sometimes I bring up this story. I know a guy who hurt his head accidentally from falling on ketamine. And ever since then, he had like a leather helmet. That was like his ketamine helmet. So every time he did ketamine, he's like, gotta put on the helmet.
Anytime you see him with a helmet, you know.
Yeah. He's getting ready. Well, hey guys, at this point, I do kind of need to wrap it up because I got to do some stuff and then take Jaden to his basketball game.
Sure, yeah. I mean, this feels like a very natural point to end the episode. Martin, thank you so much for everything, for coming here and for sharing your wisdom. This was invaluable, truly. Well, so super stimulating.
Yeah, well, thank you both for having me on, and Helgi for sharing about your own experience, and I'm so glad that we could talk about it at this level now. And it's been a delight and pleasure to speak with you guys, and I've really enjoyed kind of diving into these are kind of controversial topics, difficult topics, and this is where I hope to keep kind of pushing the conversation around 5-MeO because I'm not. Again, I do support the let's be safe, let's be practical. I do support that, and I think that's an important part of education around it. But there's so much more that's possible, and I think that's where I always want to keep pushing the
Yeah,
conversation.
you don't just want to have the helmet on all the time. Sometimes
Right.
you gotta take the helmet off. There's more to explore, but the helmet definitely has its place because you have the drive-by shamanism that's hurting a lot of people. So let's start with the helmet, but there's definitely more to go, I guess.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, awesome. Well, great pleasure in that case to get to be a part of you pushing the conversation in the direction you want to push it in. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's,
All right.
Let's go.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah. Take
Till
care
next
until
time.
next time.
Take care.
Just before you leave, everybody, our outro song for this episode is my song Infinite Licorice, which is featuring Martin Ball. And the story behind this song is very funny. So this was way back, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago when I was going through a lot of, we can say, cosmic insanity. I was having a lot of fun, going crazy, and I was working with a lot of LSD at the time, and I was having an experience in the forest at some point. And earlier in the day, I had drunk some licorice tea. And then there I was coming up on this trip, and I was like, wait, what is this essence? And then it dawned on me, licorice. But this wasn't just like licorice, it was like the very essence of licorice. And
You had to be there, guys. You don't get it.
yeah. And during this period I hadn't made a connection with Martin Ball yet, but I started to mess with him a lot, just like joking around, sending him random stuff. And at some point I sent him a message like, hey, can you like send me like a voice, like spoken word thing for a song about like discovering infinite licorice? I was not expecting him to go along with this, but to my absolute ball exploding horrors, he sends me the voice thing, and I'm like, oh my god, this is too good to be true. This is like the funniest thing.
He didn't even go, yeah, sure, I'll do it. When do you want to? He just sent
No,
you
I don't think so. No, I think he just sent it over.
That's
And
amazing.
also, I had heard him do a lot of like crazy voice stuff when like demonstrating stuff he does on 5-Meo DMT. And I was like, can you do like some of that crazy voice throat singing stuff, crazy lizard sounds that he does? And he sent some of that too. And there's a lot of sound effects in that song that you wouldn't actually know are a human. That's him doing crazy stuff. And
very interesting. It's
and-
hilarious hearing you tell this story from your perspective now, Helgi, because before we started recording this podcast episode, you were away for a second. I don't know what you were doing, but me and Martin got a chance to chat just before we started recording, just the two of us, and I was curious to know from him how you guys actually met each other, because I don't think I heard that story before today. So I got this exact same story from his perspective before we got started recording this episode. He was like, yeah, Helgi started sending me these weird messages. And but he was like, he said he'd been intrigued by them because he was like, yeah, somebody was approaching me, I think authentically was the word he used. I don't remember. I might be misquoting.
One second.
Sorry, Martin, if I'm misquoting you. But yeah, it seemed that he appreciated your strangeness, that you weren't like, hello, Mr. Dr. Ball, with a super official message or anything. You were just like, shooting the shit, really, just shooting him some weird stuff. And then he said he'd been so stoked when you asked him to collaborate on some music, because he was like, yeah, well, that was like, I was just like dying to make some music, actually. So a music man reached out to me and wanted to make music with me. That's freaking great. Let's go. That's what he said. So, yeah.
I'm sorry to say I'm back on my shitty microphone. My computer was dying. I'm struggling with the battery. But yeah, and then we've had a lot of musical collaborations since then. He's done a lot of flute stuff for me. I think the voice stuff he does on this song is very fundamentally unique. I don't think you're gonna hear that kind of stuff anywhere else. It's very, very cool, and it fits very well into this kind of psytrance thing I was doing for this song. And I really, this song it's very representative of kind of the cosmic insanity I was going through at the time. So I'm doing a lot of crazy stuff. I'm playing with the whole tone scale at some point, which was a lot of fun, just because it's a very kind of wacky, insane sounding scale.
And then you got all these kind of Spangle-esque textures as well.
Yeah, I went deep with the sound design. I was doing a lot of crazy, working with Serum, which is a synthesizer, and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Like different stuff in the left and right ear, and using with frequency modulation to create these kind of metallic sounds. And then I was using a lot of kind of stereo melody stuff, where one ear is doing a melody and another is harmonizing. And in the end, I have this kind of this filter on, where I'm modulating the speed of the filter, so it's kind of vibrating. And sometimes the right and left ear are synchronized, and then they go apart, and they do kind of their own rhythm, and they sync back up again. And for me, this was kind of symbolic of just reality, of kind of separating itself and doing its own thing, and then coming back to symmetry and harmony. And that's how the song ends. It's these kind of two melodies that are kind of doing their own rhythm, kind of synchronize together and land. So it's kind of symbolic, and kind of symbolic also for Martin's work, because he speaks a lot about physical symmetry in the context of 5-Meo DMT. So I don't think there's anything more to say about the song. So
that reminded me of our ketamine trip as well a little bit.
Elaborate.
Everybody go listen to our episode where we talked about the ketamine trip as well. After you listen to Infinite Licorice.
What is this taste? This exquisite flavor. This divine essence. Licorice. Infinite licorice.